everyone. Welcome back to Mapping Inspirational Women podcast. So this podcast is started by me, Hermione, in 2023. At that time, I was doing an open educational resource initiative called the Inspirational Women, and I wanted to put them on the map so that more people could know about it. And I was like, not just only a map, I also want to have the stories being told. That's how this podcast starts, also called the same name, Mapping Inspirational Women. And today it's a special podcast with Coffee&Geography with Kit.
Yay! Yay! So, folks, if that was a bit of a weird intro for you for the Coffee&Geography podcast, like, what's this? It's because we're doing a mashup. Because mapping inspirational women, geography, and just a bit of coffee, so we're merging the whole three today, Hermione. So this is amazing. Yep. So my name is Kit Marie Rackley, folks. My pronouns are they, them, or she, her, and it is absolutely amazing. Hermione's quick become one of my closest friends in the geography community, and I'm so looking forward to this mashup.
I remember like last time I was at Coffee&Geography as a guest, and
Yep.
2 weeks ago, right, in GA conference, we were
That's
there.
right. Yeah,
that
so
was in Manchester.
you had your own episode. I think it was last middle of last season, season
Yeah,
3.
something around this time. Yeah.
Yeah, and then you had a little cameo appearance a couple of weeks ago for the GA conference.
Yes. And now you're at our joint podcast. I'll start with my starter question. I know what your starter question is. My starter question is, where is your favorite place, or where are your favorite places?
When you sent me these questions, was like, do I have to pick one? Okay, so I would say for me, if I was to put something at the top of the list, I mean, I could have chosen San Francisco because a lot of my identity was discovered in San Francisco. I could choose Boulder, Colorado, when I worked with climate scientists. Some places, but I think I'm going to go for the Rocky Mountains just outside of Bozeman, Montana. So that has a lot of meaning for me. I mean, it's the place. So my in-laws have a place out there where the family get together. It's in a glacial trough, which is beautiful, and the house looks down the valley towards the city of Bozeman. It's such a beautiful thing. You've got a mountain range to the right and a kind of like more hillier range to the left, but it's where my wife and I got married. It's where we have got so many special memories. The air is pure. You've got sandhill cranes, who are partnered up for life, who visit it every year. And so the sound of them in the morning, that noise in the morning when you wake up, is just beautiful. Seen shooting stars, the Milky Way, because the sky is so clear. And also, I have to be a bit geeky here, Hermione. It's also the future site for Star Trek First Contact, where the Vulcans are going to meet the humans in 2063. So, yeah.
Really? That's what's going to happen, huh?
I hope so.
Yeah. That's very interesting to know about this, and always feel like other geographers were so curious about place, space, and all the meaning. Like it's not just a location, it's also something you attach to that makes it one of your favorites of this. Yeah. When you were describing this, it just connects with me about Stirling, because what Stirling has is we have a very good view of the city at the hill, and then behind us it's kind of the Stirling campus. We have Oak Hills, kind of like at the edge of Highland. So it's very beautiful. I hope you get a chance to visit in the future as well.
Yes.
Do you want to go with your
question? Yeah, so I thought it actually really, because the question I asked you previously, when I talked to you previously, was your sense of identity. So I'm gonna progress from your answer of that last time about your identity, from your Chinese background and Sterling and up like that. Is if you were to kind of like say, yeah, my favorite, the part of my identity that I love the most and the place I associate with. So what would you say that would be?
The place. Could you say that again to help me think again?
So yeah, so a place which you think, so a part of you that you feel you're very comfortable with, your soul is in complete sync with. Is there a place that has informed that or attached that somewhere in the world that you think, that's me through and through?
I don't think I have got such a place yet, But I think the closest to that I feel I myself is actually around Stirling. It's on the move. So when I was cycling by myself, I was telling my friend actually just around lunch, like I was cycling from the city center to University of Stirling. So there was a very beautiful village. You come through, there are cherry blossoms, and you come through the village, through the bridge, and then it's just me. Next to me, all the field and the lambies, like kind of like around me. And then like that's a moment I feel this is my life. And I feel free, completely free by that with
There
my
you
bike
go.
on the move. Although I know if it's terrible weather, I probably won't feel like that. But that time it was very beautiful with a bit overcast. The moment, I think the
Mm.
very close to the moment I feel, yes, that this is where I want to be.
I think that's what links us together there. So the way I feel about that place outside of Bose, Montana is exactly
Mm,
that kind of feeling that I get. I was never born there, I was never raised there. My wife's family's got strong connections there.
yeah,
But when I go there, I almost feel like my soul is coming home, you know, even though I've not actually been born and bred there. And the community is so good that they're very, very, they get a lot of outsiders. A lot of people have
yeah,
second homes out there and stuff like that. But
yeah.
there was one time when there was quite a major wildfire out in the mountains, which got as far as only a mile from the house. And
Mm,
the way that the community banded together, and I was here in the
mm,
UK during COVID, and I did as much as I could remotely to support the community out
yeah,
there to get back on their feet.
yeah,
So yeah, I have that same thought and feeling when I think about that place.
yeah. Yes. I think it's also the people, place, and your
Mm,
experience with this that kind of like make it, which I think actually links to one of my favorite humanist geographer called Yifu Duan. Although we may have another podcast to talk about that because Yifu Duan not a woman.
of
But
course,
yes, but
inspirational,
yes,
but not a woman.
yeah. So some other time. Shall shall we move to the main question?
Let's go for it.
Yes, let's
Yeah.
go for it. I'll go with you first. So can you recall women who have inspired you in entering this career or in your life in
Oh,
general?
yeah. I mean, I've had so many influences. So I guess the best thing to do maybe is perhaps go about this probably chronologically, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so I would say the first person that really inspired me, and it is a bit of a tragic story, but
Mm,
it's someone who, because this event happened when I was very young. I was only like three
mm,
and a half, 4 years old, but it's something I remember very, very specifically, and that was when the space shuttle Challenger
mm.
disaster happened. So when
Ah,
it it I remember all the facts very, very clearly. So it was the 28th of January 1986. Now I
mm,
didn't remember the specifics at the time because I was only like 3.5 years old, but I remember the event. And then as I grew older and I got more and more into, because I originally wanted to become like an astrophysicist. So
yeah.
I had, I wrote a letter to NASA. They sent me loads of stuff, and I'd visited
Uh-huh.
NASA in Florida and stuff like that. But the one person I kept thinking of was
Mm,
Krista McAuliffe, the
mm,
teacher, the high
mm,
school teacher who out of 11,000 applicants,
mm.
she was the successful applicant for the NASA Teacher in Space project, and she was
Yeah,
going to be the first teacher ever to fly in
yeah.
space. And what I remember so distinctly is that the every mission of the space shuttle has a crest, has a symbol, a patch that they stick on their uniform, right?
Yeah.
And it's got all the names of the astronauts on that mission. And next to Krista McAuliffe's name, so McAuliffe had a little apple next to it, a little apple for the
Mm,
teacher. Um, and the reason why it inspired me so much is because for two reasons. There's one is because, it was the mid 80s, but it was still a very male dominated kind of like industry. The
yeah.
vast majority of astronauts at the time were male, and so there have been plenty of female astronauts that have come before her, but to be someone who was effectively a member of the public who worked in
Mm,
teaching and education and worked directly with kids,
yeah.
so I just found her story so inspiring. And I have to say that um, when I was thinking about what to do for a career, and I was like kind of thinking, well, astrophysics was now out the window, and ended up doing environmental science. I wouldn't say that Kristen McAuliffe was a reason why I ended up going into teaching, but certainly when I thought for other reasons thought me about going into teaching, for some strange reason, my mind went back to Kristen McAuliffe and thinking about what she represented for the school community, for the way how much she inspired her young people, and how it ended up in so much tragedy. You know, because it is a risky thing to be a national, and so that's a really bizarre one. It's like, how could, you know, but yeah, I don't know what it is about Kristen McAuliffe and her story, but it is just something that inspires me. So moving on a little bit further down the line, so now I'm kind of like starting my teaching career, and there is all these things about how are we going to deal with climate change, because climate change is my area of expertise, it's my specialism, it's my area of interest and passion. And so the next person I really felt I wanted to learn more about was Wangari Maathai. Now, Wangari Maathai, she's a Kenyan social and environmental political activist. And in 2004, she became the first African woman to receive the Nobel Peace Prize for a contribution towards sustainable development and democracy, right? So very inspirational person, made the news quite a fair bit. And because that was 2004, I was just starting my teacher training, right? And I just completed my environmental science degree. And as you know, and people listening are aware that I'm a member of the Decolonizing Geography group, right? So to have someone like Wangari to get this award was very inspirational. And I later found out that I didn't realize this until later, but I later found out that she was the person who founded, or one of the founders of, the Green Belt movement. So planting all those trees across the continent of Africa, right? I did not know that she was the founder of that. So she founded the Green Belt movement. You know, she was always been an advocate for planting trees and environmental conservation, and she was a very strong proponent of women's rights. So she most certainly is an inspiration to me. And then the final one was, now I was kind of halfway into my teaching career. And I've mentioned this person quite a lot, but at the time when I first met her, she was 14 years old.
Wow.
And it was at a Geographical Association conference, believe it or not. She was the youngest ever person to give a talk at the GA conference about conservation, bird watching, ornithology, all that kind of stuff. And you could tell she was nervous, bless her, but she came across with such wisdom and authority and passion. And that's Maya Rose Craig, who's now in her early to mid 20s now, and doing amazing things for conservation and for women of color in the environment and stuff like that. So she kind of, at the time I was kind of wavering in my teaching career, really. And I remember seeing that lecture and thinking to myself, she's just reminded me about the reason why I'm in the job. So, yeah. So they're the three. Then we've got Kristen McAuliffe, Wangari Maathai, and Maya Rose Craig. They're my three.
Yeah. I was going to say, like, when you talk about the second one, I feel like the name sounds so familiar because I already put her on the Mapping Inspirational Women world map. Yeah. So like,
there you go.
It sounds so familiar. Like, I definitely have it. Because when you talk about the green belt and all of this, I'm like, yes, that's it. So I feel that we're already connected with this. And she's also the person that I'm going to put on in the poster next week when I went to the Nature and the Climate Emergency in-person event. I want to show like all the stories, all the exciting and positive changes women has made for nature and the climate challenge.
And there you go. So you're sharing your screen with me now, and you've got the map, and you've got her entry on there in Kenya, and at the same time I realized she was the person who's founded the Green Belt project, the Green Belt movement. I also found out she had passed away, and I remember being quite devastated about that. Really,
so there is someone continuing this.
There is
that's
indeed.
what I found out. Do you see I put these two together? So I always put purple for people, deep purple for the people
Elizabeth
who have passed
Watufi,
away. And there's also people continuing doing similar things relevant to it. That's why I put the place because they are very close to each other in a way
Indeed.
to continuing what they're doing. So yeah,
Yep.
which is also a member of the Green Bear movement, which is founded by her role model. So you could
There
see
you
all
go.
the changes, all the stories being told. Yeah.
Oh, so beautiful. And so you coffee and geography folks, you know that there's a map of all the guests and the source of coffee. But yeah, and now to see that spatially with the mapping inspirational women map, which is really,
Yes.
really, because of course, yes, there you go. So you're zooming out and you can see that geospatial pattern that you're working on there and
Yeah.
those two entries for Kenya.
Yeah, and I I know it's not going to be possible that you cover everyone and everything in one
Absolutely.
go, and no one would have that knowledge. But it's kind of like building up, getting all of this, and see that how it is happening is really something I want to see in this initiative. And now things we've talked about halfway in your teaching, we're now moving to the present, the time traveling ship
Yay.
of mapping inspirational women to you. So could you
Yeah.
tell us a bit more about yourself, like where you are? I know you're in
Right.
Climate Change Center now, and about keywords about yourself. So your time.
Right. Okay. All right. Okay. So it's a bit tricky for a mashup podcast, quite tricky because like my guests have heard this, my listeners have heard it all before. But anyway, here we go for your listeners. Yes. So you obviously I introduced myself a bit earlier with they and she pronouns. Is I'm a trans individual, a trans non-binary femme or trans woman, if you so wish. A bit more nuanced and a bit more nebulous than that, but that's gender for you. um, and in terms of my personality and my identity, I would say more than being someone who's a member of the trans community, I am more of a geographer and an educator. Really, that's my key identity. My passion is learning about the world and passing on that knowledge to others, but not just learning about the world from my lens and my privilege, but also learning about the world from other people's lenses, which is why I've been following the work that you've been doing and why I talk to so many different kinds of people for coffee and geography. So that's kind of like my identity and my passion. And then when it comes into my professional life, the other thing that I actually identify as is a science communicator. So I used to be a geography high school teacher and I stopped that. And then I branched out into my passionate areas, which is on climate change education and climate change science communication. So really long story short, after about what's this 7 years now since I finished teaching, um, where I am now through various routes is that I'm now sitting talking to you. So, folks, I'm not recording this as I usually do in my desk at home. I am in an office. I've got reams and reams of PhD publications on the shelf there, and we'll come to back that to you for Hermione with Dr. Hermione Meow. And then I'm in the building, the actual office. One of the offices in the University of East Anglia's Tyndall Centre for Climate Change Research. That is now my place of work because my job now is after working 3.5 years in university outreach. I am now one of 9 regional coordinators for the Climate Ambassador Scheme here in England. So what that means is that for the whole of East of England,
Mm.
I am meant to be someone who coordinates efforts and coordinates people to support schools and colleges and other educational settings to work towards net zero, to have a greener curriculum, to decarbonize their school grounds, to improve biodiversity. So it's not a small task. It's not a small task, but
It's
I'm a
challenging.
coordinator. So
Yeah.
I'm not meant to be doing the whole job myself. My role is to find allies and stakeholders who can help with that. So that's where I am today.
It's so exciting, like how you developed ideas of your geographer and how you science communicator and
Mm,
coming here as a climate ambassador, and seeing
mm,
that yourself as a coordinator rather than using the common term that people a lot will say leader. I think that's a
yeah.
very different way, kind of like seeing this as a community growing and everyone actually they have things want to do, but of course there still need to be people coordinating or convening to do these things to connect
Mm,
people from different community to know actually there are exciting people doing this, do you want to meet each other and maybe to get
right.
along and talk about this. Yeah, that's very
That's it. Yeah.
important.
It's really interesting because it's brought a lot of my freelance stuff that I did
Yeah.
in the same time as my educational outreach stuff, I've actually been able to bring into this role. So like the work that I've been doing to try and bring climate change into school safeguarding policy, for example, that's something I'm really passionate about. Climate literacy and improving climate literacy, that's something and supporting young people and teachers through dealing with building resilience and managing climate anxiety. So they're all those things, but they've all been brought into this role. And what you just said is absolutely perfect. So, and folks, do get in touch with us. You can just search for climate ambassadors for STEM learning on the STEM learning website. And it's what you said. Yeah, it's what it is. It is getting people who have signed up and have done the free training, the free induction to be a climate ambassador. And then if a school says needs help with a certain thing for their climate action plan, like they want to make their school grounds more biodiverse, they can get in touch with me and the climate ambassador and get someone in who is willing to support the school doing that with materials or with knowledge, with expertise. And it could be working with the students directly, it could be working with the site team. It's just such an exciting time now. So we kick off officially at the end of May. So yeah, getting ready for that.
I think there's a potential that I could ask you help with this, to have these connections, because actually I think hopefully in May, when the HR is done with all the kind of like administrative stuff, I will be officially doing my postdoc. And one of my postdoc, the focus is about, we call Impact Accelerator. Impact Accelerator is about my PhD thesis, which is related to teacher agency and curriculum making. And climate change is one of the featured topics I want to talk about. I see how that teachers will benefit by knowing about climate scientists' work and what existing efforts have been, where is a kind of a community. Because the biggest finding in my study is that sometimes it's not teacher doesn't want to do it. They don't know there have been resources helping them to do this.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that actually, that kind of, so for your present then, Hermione, so since folks last listened to you on the Coffee and Geography podcast last year, you've become Dr. Hermione Mao, which is amazing. So bring us up to your present then. So you've just given us a little snippet there. So what else can you update us with?
I think for the Coffee and Geography guests that would have updated is like now, like you said, the biggest thing is I can add the title now. And but another thing is, for me, I'm more confirmed of the idea that there are loads of resources, loads of people willing to help people if you reach out. And before I was like, well, I'll be bothering people by asking of this, and can I say that? They'd be quite busy. But now through my study, I noticed that the teachers who have achieved agency and people they know, like the question I'm asking is not just for myself, and for asking for the people who have similar situation like me. And if I ask, if they gave this answer, and I should share with this community, it's kind of like tearing down all the barriers, tearing down all the walls that used to be there. And that is what I also see. Like, I think that's partly why I could get this postdoc, is because they realize why they need access and participation. And people who used to not know this is happening now know it is happening. And another thing I want to update is I've been in the Scottish Education Research Association Early Career Researchers Network for a while. Now I have 2 co-conveners. So I probably will step off next year because we want more people to have experience as a conveners. But what I have done is I have rebranded the ECR idea from E to editorial writing, and C, conversations with scholars, and R, reading club. So it has been going on as a kind of ecological cycle. That's how you could bring people together and develop something. And that's why before I was talking to you, we're so lucky that at the reading club, we have new people coming and they bring in the important questions,
like fresh ideas.
Who has influenced the John Dewey, Jane Addams. Like a lot of people don't know that. And they always, even educators, they just trace back to John Dewey. John Dewey seemed to be the end of it. No, there are more people. And there are actually women being forgotten in this developing of the philosophy of pragmatism, and maybe in a lot of other fields. So that is something I think I've become more assured of. What I'm doing is meaningful, and it is helping people to know, yes, it is possible. And these are all open educational resources. it's free, but people usually don't know that. I think a lot of people don't know that. There are many reasons, because for now I haven't secured any big research funding or grant with it. I'm just doing it with my passion, kind of the term, like I just want to do it. I can't stop thinking about it.
Yeah.
But it's going on, so from the beginning of this postdoc, and also getting support from my mentor, Professor Lizzie Rushton, and also my informal mentor in Oxford. And the other thing I find is, once you start want to do things, people will help you. They actually help you. Like I
Yep.
didn't even imagine that people would reply to my email and saying like, maybe we could have this collaboration. And I had a podcast with my university as well. We had an International Women's Day special podcast with a entrepreneur in residence to talk about it, to talk about like why women entrepreneur stories haven't been told so widely comparing
Right.
to these men as
Yeah.
entrepreneurs. All of this helps me to extend, also go outside of my comfort zone, which is academia, like just talk about all the books and all these things. I want to see like wider, like people from all walks of life. What do they see as inspirations? What women do they know in their life? Yeah.
Yeah, well, there you go. Well, I find you inspirational, Hermione, and you mentioned another inspirational woman, and Dr. Lizzie Rushton, the wonderful Dr. Lizzie Rushton. Hi, Lizzie. I hope you're listening.
Yeah. So I was very, very lucky. Talking about Lizzie, I think last time when we were having conversation, I was saying I'm going to do a mapping feminist approach to climate change education in Royal Geographical Society for the
Oh,
international
great.
conference in August 2023. That was the time I emailed Lizzie and asked like, could you help me retweet, and I want to see if you kind of like borrow your influence from this. And Lizzie helped me
Yeah,
kind of like retweet and repost you too. So kind of like have more people knowing that there are different ways to do it, and bringing to this. It was very successful, and I get a lot of input from the delegates at Royal Geographical Society.
that's
Yeah.
great.
And at the time, Lizzie didn't even know me, and now she's in the faculty I'm also in, and she's going to be my mentor in the postdoc. So like, oh my God, dreams will come true. Just start,
Um,
take the first move. Yeah.
that's brilliant. Oh, exciting times. Oh, so I guess that moves on to the future then, doesn't it? Because we're now
Yeah.
talking about the future.
Yeah.
So you
About your
got another
future.
question for me?
Yes. So my question is like, I know you're going to start with your climate ambassador. I was wondering, talking about the possible futures, if you are talking to the people like you, the future you, 10 years later, what would you say to them?
Oh, this is the question I struggled the
Mm,
most with, because it's just like, because obviously we don't know what the way things are going to be
yeah.
in 10 years time. So what I did, I took a very, very mathematical approach to this, right? It's like, okay, from what I know from my training in climate science, where could
Mm,
we possibly be in 10 years time? So
mm,
I'll tell you what we're going to do. I'm going to approach this question in assuming that we've done the best we can and we've given ourselves the best chance, right? So what I want to say in 10 years time is I
mm,
want to speak to people and I want to say to them, look, 10 years ago, we started this journey about
mm,
showing how collaboration can really
yeah,
make a difference. So you just mentioned it from your experience, how collaboration has enabled you to do so much more work and has enabled you and empowered you. So I would say the same thing. So for example, do you remember 10 years ago, we kicked off with things like the National Education Nature Park. And back in those times, there was not very many schools and
yeah,
participate, but now the entire country, every single school in the country has now signed up for, and we've got an area twice the size of Birmingham that is protected with biodiversity and is resilient to climatic changes and has got butterflies and bees. And then I want to say, you did that when you were in school, you did that, and now that your children are in school,
yeah,
they're carrying on your legacy,
yeah,
and it's given us hope for the future. That's what I
yeah.
want to. That's what I hope I will share with somebody in 10 years' time. It doesn't matter if it's,
Mm,
you know, so let's say, yeah, the young people I'm working with right now if I was to bump into them again in 10 years' time,
Yeah.
that's what I'd say to them. Look what you
Yeah.
started. Look at the legacy you are leaving.
Yeah.
And this gives us, yes, things still look grim. Yes, things still look desperate. But I tell you what, look at how we came together to make this happen. And
Mm.
aren't we now feeling like we've got a fighting chance? So that's, yeah, that's what I would say. I'd say that's a really good question. Yeah, in 10 years'
Yeah.
time, if you can look back and say, wow, what did we achieve? Can you imagine
Mm.
where it would be if we didn't do that?
Mm.
So yeah,
I would say,
that's what I
yeah,
hope.
I'm going to tag along in the 10 years that it's not going to be just in Birmingham, in England. Maybe you could go different places. Like I'm
Indeed.
sure there are other places that also have exciting projects that maybe you and your collaborators or the children, they could travel to
Mm,
different places and see how other places they're
that's
developing
it.
with the nature educational park with climate
Yeah.
change of this, like all these different wisdom that could be put together to see we will
And that
have
and that
more.
and that's the beauty of the project. It's like,
Yeah.
you've got this area which is the equivalent of twice the size of Birmingham when you put all of the schools in England and together. And then so you can have urban environments like schools in Birmingham. You can
Mm.
have rural environments like schools where I used to teach in rural Norfolk, stuff like that. And
Yeah.
yeah, it wouldn't it be amazing if in 10 years' time, if like you look at that National Education Nature Park and you
Mm.
can actually outside, well, during term time, you can go and visit those schools and
Mm.
collaborate. But outside of term time, you can go and visit these schools and they're like little mini nature parks,
Mm.
you know? I mean, that would be amazing. That would be
Mm.
amazing.
Yeah, that would be amazing. And also it'd be amazing that in a way that we see all these sister parks like around the world, like all these kind of
Yeah, yeah.
stories being told by children, like and they grow up to the teenage years and like they may take even longer, like 20 years, like, oh, my children's going to that place. I planted a tree. That's so cool. With all of these stories you
Yeah.
can keep telling and all of this to know it's all about people and the place and believing the place and can be
Mm.
better like when we are living it before we can.
Yeah. And yeah, and this is what I really loved about when I spoke to the explorer
Mm.
Miriam Lancwood for the Coffee and Jog podcast, is that this whole sense of like being place centered rather than time centered.
Mm.
So if you're place centered and you focus on the place, like you just the perfect example, if you have planted that tree in that spot
Yeah.
and then your children see it in 10, 15, 20 years time, and then your grandchildren see it,
Yeah.
time does no longer matter
Yeah.
because you're place centered and you're
Mm.
seeing that time is merely a vessel of communication, collaboration, production, inspiration that just passes from generation to generation. And then I wouldn't say time becomes meaningless, but time becomes less of a burden
Yeah.
and more of a gift. And
Yeah.
that's what I really loved of what Miriam was saying about being place centered. Yeah, I think planting a tree and then visiting it generation after generation is a prime example of being place centered. That'd be amazing.
Yes. It recalls to me like one of the sayings we have in China. We talk about like it takes 10 years to grow a tree and take 100 years to grow a man. So, kind of like human being,
Nice.
not just particular man, like human being of this.
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
kind of
yeah.
like it all takes a time. And sometimes like if you think things beyond yourself, things more about the world and nature and all this, you may feel like, yes, I do have limited time in my life, but I have talked about my ideas and I've put them into practice, like planting trees and living a more sustainable life, caring about others. This is my legacy. Even maybe my body will die, this will
Yeah,
still continue. And the
yeah.
tree will grow, the nature will continue to develop, and we will see how it will be.
Yes.
So it's so exciting for me, and I don't feel like, oh, I'm dead and then everything's done. No, what you
Yeah,
have done will leave a legacy. Yeah.
right. And and that actually kind of brings us back to, talking about Wingari Matai
Yeah.
with a, she doesn't
With a green
necessarily
belt.
have a legacy through time. She has
Mm.
a legacy in place,
Yeah.
and that
Green
is
belt.
that belt across Africa. And
Mm.
that is a legacy that is being left through space and place rather than through time. And that to me is more powerful.
And now we are coming to the connection time with from the
Ooh.
previous podcast. So each each podcast, in the end, I always end with a question. I ask the guest to leave a question and also pick a question from previous guests.
Nice.
And then know you, based on
Yep.
our conversation, you chosen the question about what are the challenges that you had faced but conquered, that you were
Yep.
able to thrive after experiencing them.
Yeah, and we're going to treat this as the coffee and geography. We are all geographers because you're linking guests. So
Yeah.
this is our special version of We Are All Geographers, folks. Right. So the challenges. Okay. So I mean, I could play a lot on my trans identity about the challenges that I've faced there, but I guess I want to be a little bit more expansive, a little bit more nuanced with that. Is that forget kind of my gender identity, if you like, and more of the case of my lived experience. So I didn't have a very great time going through school. I was bullied a lot and things like that. You know, there were uh, lots of things being talked about me. I mean, this was during the day, for those in the UK who know, these were during the days of Section 28 when you weren't allowed to teach about LGBTQ issues and stuff like that. And so I went through the whole of my school life like not knowing what, you know, thinking there was something wrong with me and not knowing what that was. Yeah. So, because I'd never had the language, the experience, whatever to deal with that, and I was bullied quite a lot. But I tell you what, when I reflect on that now, and I think about the few allies and friends that I really do have at school, and this is relevant to your podcast, really, I would say that almost exclusively, with the one or two exceptions, they were females, women, girls, mostly. They were a lot of them were ended up finding out they were queer themselves. So lesbian, they're lesbian women, they're queer women, and I was speaking to them after years and years of school, like finding out that actually, even though they appeared like some of these were the cool kids at the time, they were just
Yeah.
conforming to fit in as well. And there's a few, there's like one person who I touch base with every now and then. I mention her name, Laura Hills. Is I always think of her fondly, and I remember her, being very very kind with me. You know, there are times as a teenager where you do act up and stuff like that, but I remember her being one of my people who I would feel safe with. And then I thought to myself, okay, so if I think about these people and the ability to just be myself around them, that is what allows me to thrive. So this is why I'm so compassionate and so loving, and I feel so deeply for the geography teacher community, even though I'm not a geography teacher anymore, is because one of the communities I've found that has been accepting of me, jokingly tolerant of me, because I'm a bit of a pest. I wear my heart on my sleeve. I'm so enthusiastic. I'm hyperactive, everything like that. So in a nice sense, I'm a pest. But despite all of that, when I see people at conference, stuff like that, and I see the beaming smile on their face, the hugs that they give me, you know, I'm not anything else but a geographer, to them, and they give me the ability to thrive. So whenever I communicate with the geography network or stuff like that, and I think back to my time when I was in school, it's like, well, I've found my place, and I found a company of people that allow me to thrive, and then do what I do now. Focus on things like climate change education, focus on things like climate justice and decolonizing stuff, because I'm not spending so much cognitive or emotional load on current things, the moral panic about trans people and stuff like that. I'm able to focus on the things that I'm genuinely passionate about and identify with. So I mean, that's not the only challenge that I face, but I most certainly feel that that's probably the major one and the first one that came to my mind. Yeah.
Thank you. Would you like to also say the question you are going to leave with us for the future guest?
Oh, yes. So I am going to have a look and remind myself about what I came up with. So another thing that I had a really, really deep think about was, what question am I going to ask? So you've asked me, so you've asked me about the changes. So I've gone off for I suppose mine is quite relatively similar, but I'm going to read it verbatim, word for word, because I think I wrote it better than I can say it. So my question is, can you give an example of inspiration, or even from your own lived experience, where the identity of being a woman intersects with another identity, resulting in something incredibly powerful or unique. So it's you've got your identity as a woman, but is there something else you identify with? And when those two things combine, wow, you feel something amazing is happening. So that's my question.
Yeah, I'm so looking forward to the future guests talking about it. And thank you for coming here for the joint podcast. Are there any coffee
Yay.
and geography questions that you would like to end up with? Any challenges?
Well, I think I've been really spoiled by having you. It's been amazing having you on quite often. So, not in particularly, but so for the Coffee and Geography folks, I guess the question I'll ask you is, where can people find out more about your Mapping Inspirational Women stuff? So where can they find that?
They can find it for. There are three places I mainly put things. So one is the link I've just showed, where I put in later in our podcast description, is a Google Map. I'm going to develop it also with the Eco Earth map, and also maybe I'm going to talk to Katie about see how could develop with
Katie
ArcGIS
Hall, yeah.
story map. So it's a map base. The other one is a social media base. Social media base is with Twitter account. I actually the short is at GEOEDU4. So that's what Mapping Inspirational is. And you could also find me with my Twitter, Hermione Meow, and I put that link there. So social media on Twitter mainly. I'm going to develop something in Instagram, but it hasn't been done much yet.
Yeah.
And the third one is the podcast. Mapping Inspirational podcast is available on YouTube for now. I'm going to also develop them later more to SoundCloud and also to Spotify. But for now, it's all on YouTube.
Yep. There you go, folks. So if you're listening to this through Coffee and Geography, make sure you go check that out. And for folks who are listening to this through Mapping Inspirational Women, if you the Coffee and Geography podcast has been around for 4 years now. So Hermione will put those links in. But if you just search for Coffee and Geography, you'll probably find it. So, and then with regards to my work, if you think this climate ambassadors thing is really, really interesting, just go onto the STEM Learning websites, just search for STEM Learning and search for climate ambassadors. We don't officially kick off until the end of May, but that's going to be something which, if you work, especially if you work in the education sector, you're going to want to put that in your bookmarks. So there we go.
Yeah. Thank you so much for the time.
Oh, it's always a pleasure, Hermione. Wonderful, inspirational person you are yourself.
Same feeling.
Ah.